I'm Julie Herman of Jaybird Quilts and Lazy Girl Designs, and welcome to the Cuppa Tea video tutorial series. These videos will be available ongoing to help you make your very own Cuppa Tea quilt. In today's video, I'm going to go over some basics of cutting with the Jumbo Lazy Angle ruler. The Jumbo Lazy Angle ruler is the ruler that is used for the blocks in the Cuppa Tea quilt. And I have a full video on cutting with this ruler, but in this video, we're going to focus on cutting specifically for the Cuppa Tea quilt. So let's get started. This is the left-handed version of cutting directions. If you are right-handed, scroll down to the description to click on the right-handed video. The Cuppa Tea Sampler Quilt was designed to use 3 main fabrics and a background. I labeled them in the book as green, raspberry, and purple to simplify things. You can see that on the coloring page and throughout the diagrams in the book. In this demonstration, I'm going to show you some basic cutting, and I'm going to use green as my sample fabric. The blocks all begin with 5.5-inch strips. The medallion is larger. So let's get started by cutting some 5.5-inch strips of fabric. I happen to have some bolts here in my studio, a fabric that I like to use for samples and demonstrations. You don't necessarily have a bolt, and that's okay. But I'm just going to show you how I cut fabric off the bolt when I do have it like this. It is folded up here, and my selvages are down here. And I am simply going to straighten up this edge and then cut off a 5.5-inch strip. Let's turn that a little bit so you can still see what I'm doing. And what I want to make sure that I do is that I have my solid line, any of the solid lines on my ruler on the folded edge of my fabric so that I know that this is nice and square, because if you're like this, when you open your strip, it's going to look like a V and you're going to have waste in the middle, and none of us want that. Just going to line that up. And I am using my So Tights magnetic cutting system. I really love it because nothing slips around. So I'm just going to cut and then lift my ruler up and rotate my fabric around. Now, as I mentioned, I want a 5.5-inch strip, and I always like to use this as an opportunity to double check, and so I will just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5. It's one of those measure twice, cut once. Now I have my strip, and I am going to unfold it. For the majority of the cutting in the book, I suggest that you work with your strip unfolded, so you're cutting one layer at a time, and that way you can ensure that you are cutting right and left pieces correctly. If you need a right and left at the same time, which happens occasionally but not very often, then you can leave your fabric folded. But for the most part, I suggest keeping your fabric unfolded one layer at a time. Once you get comfortable, you can cut multiple layers, but if you're cutting block by block for this quilt, I find it's just best to use one layer at a time. First thing we want to do is take our ruler and square off this edge. I'm not going to be using these lines for any of my cutting. I'm going to be focusing just on the lines of my ruler. So I'm going to line up one of the straight edges of my ruler with the fabric up here. It happens to line up with my 5.5 here. And then since this ruler is not magnetic, I'm going to use my So Tights booster magnets to help it become magnetic, and now it won't slide anywhere. I'm simply going to trim. Now that I have that squared off, I'm going to rotate it around 180 degrees and do my first cut. And one of the things you will need for Cuppa Tea is A shapes and B shapes. We're going to start with A. A is the larger shape, and so we're going to look for the solid 5.5-inch line that goes around our ruler and line that up along the base and the side. And cut, and there we go. We have our first A piece. And to cut our next A piece, we are simply going to take the ruler and we are going to rotate it around 180 degrees. And we're going to line up now the diagonal line here and the solid line here along the 5.5-inch. and cut. So now we have two of the same shape. Now, what if we need the left A? We are simply going to take our fabric, flip it wrong side up. We're going to cut with our fabric wrong side up. The ruler in the same orientation, fabric wrong side up, will give us our left pieces. So the difference is when we want right pieces, right side up, left pieces, wrong side up. And again, to cut the next one, rotate the ruler around. And trim. And now you can see we have mirror images. So follow the directions in your book for each block on how many right and left A and B's you need. Let's show you now how we're going to cut the B shapes. So let's start with our right B's. And our B shape is our smaller shape. And where it's located on the ruler is this straight line for all sizes. So we're going to line up that straight line on the edge of our fabric and the 5.5 inch solid line on the base of our ruler. Always double check, make sure you're good before you cut. And now to cut our next B, we are not going to rotate the ruler, we are going to flip the ruler. So we're going to pick it up and we're going to flip it to the back. And we're going to line up our cut line along this solid diagonal line. And look again for our 5.5s. Grab our magnets and cut. Now we have our B shapes. And when these are in a different color, you piece B and A and it makes a square. So now what if we needed left B's? Normally I would have pressed this, but as I cut from the beginning of this, I haven't pressed that. So I'm going to square up this edge so we don't need to worry about that right now. So same as I did in the beginning. Make sure that ruler is lined up. Square this off. And now to cut our left B shapes, we want, again, wrong side up. Left, wrong side. So ruler in the same orientation as we did for this, but fabric wrong side up. So again, 5.5 and the solid line. Trim. And to do the next one, going to flip the ruler. Line it up there. And trim. And all of the blocks have A and B shapes, and they also all involve squares. So to get our 5.5 inch squares, which are often used in our corners of our block or sometimes in our centers, just going to take a regular ruler again and count over 5.5, and then we can cut our 5.5 inch squares. Those are most often cut from the background, but sometimes they are cut from the raspberry and the purple and the green. And then say I've now done all my green cutting for my entire quilt. Then I am going to work on the cutting for my companion blocks, which are 4-patch, square and a square, corner flip, so forth and so on. And so depending on what you need, those are smaller than 5.5. So figure out what you need, and then I like to then cut this strip down to whatever width I need for those, and then subcut those pieces from this strip. I grabbed a few raspberry pieces that I have cut just to show you what it's going to look like when you put your A and B pieces together in different fabrics. So this is just an example. Every block has step-by-step directions in the book to show you how to use the pieces that we just cut. I hope you found this video on cutting with the jumbo lazy angle ruler for the Cuppa Tea book helpful. If you have any questions, please ask those in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the video, please be sure to like it and subscribe to the channel. And if you have not yet signed up for the Cuppa Tea Sew Along that is happening this fall, you can do so also in the caption below. We look forward to seeing you sew along with us.